This time we will compare two leaders in super zoom market. Both belong to the same segment and they are in pretty much the same price. First one is well known for my subscribers, Nikon Coolpix B700. Previously compared with Coolpix P900, you can find that video on my channel. Second is something new that I am glad I can test for you. Sony HX400, a lot of positive ratings, and despite it's 4 years old, it's still selling really well and many people choose this camera over its rivals, including Coolpix B700 of course. In this video I will try to answer which one should you get. As far as specification goes, I need to mention some of the most important one. HX400 features 20 megapixel 1/2.3 inch sensor, 50x optical zoom, that's 24 to 1200 mm with f2.8 to 6.3 aperture, records video at maximum of 1080p at 60 frames per second. It weighs 660 grams. B700 has 20 megapixel 1/2.3 inch sensor, 60x optical zoom, that's 24 to 1440 mm with f3.3 to 6.5 aperture. Records video at maximum of 4K at 30 frames per second. It weighs 570 grams. In terms of design, personally, I find Sony HX400 more appealing. It's slightly bulkier, but I find it looks more coherent. All used Sony Technologies fancy names are placed on the body, like Exmor optical steady shot and nice blue Carl Zeiss logo on the lens. It makes it looks like whole fine package made with attention to details. I like the old school ring on Sony's lens that can be used for manual focus or zoom. On the other hand, Coolpix B700 is lighter, more subtle and practical in its design, with less names and curves. It's also smaller and slightly lighter than Sony. Both are made from plastic covered with some fine texture, but Sony's lens housing is made from metal. Otherwise, quality is very similar, maybe except for battery compartment, which is weakest point on Sony's build quality. It's very flimsy and feels cheap, but I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Ultimately, let's not forget it's only super zoom segment. In terms of grip, Sony has leather look, textured rubber flat grip. It is little bit less grippy, but it's in exchange of more pleasant in touch material than Nikon, and it's also bigger and gives more room for the hand. Nikon has smaller and sharper textured rubber grip that almost pinch to your hand. Definitely more secure, but slightly less comfortable to use. Viewfinders on those cameras are very small, but I already get used to this thing. It's unfortunately standard in this segment. Either way, Nikon seems sharper and just tad better when it comes to electronic viewfinder resolution. Most important, they are included and you can use them when you need to. Both have 3-inch LCD articulating screens, however they articulate in different ways. Sony gives you very limited range of extension. Nikon wins hands down in this department. In terms of their quality, things are different. I find Sony's LCD to be more accurate than Coolpix B700 LCD, which is more saturated and maybe more appealing for some, but it doesn't provide same color accuracy in previewing photos, which is quite important matter. Sony used really good screen, I can't say a bad word about it. Additionally, it has glass cover protection over its screen, which I cannot say about my scratched Coolpix B700 unfortunately. User interface is also Sony's field. It's very well optimized and very developed. Maybe there are many things going on and blinking on the camera, but in exchange all the settings and manual mode with live view exposure changes are working faster and more advanced than in Nikon. However, for beginners, Nikon user interface offers easier access and less searching for options, because it's not so overwhelmed and whole menu is more minimalistic. Another important matter is autofocus, especially in this type of camera. You often have to be really quick to shoot photo of plane or some birds. Sony is without a doubt faster than Nikon. You can clearly spot a difference, especially while zooming or in poor light condition. Let's take a look at stabilization in photo mode. Sony uses its famous branded steady shot optical stabilization, but Nikon also has its own optical stabilization system. I think Sony is little bit better, but both cameras are fantastic when it comes to stabilization, to be honest. You can shoot things at maximum zoom handheld on both without a problem, definitely very impressive. Going into image quality, for everyone that likes to edit pictures, Nikon Coolpix B700 has ability to shoot RAW files, which cannot be said about Sony HX400. In terms of zoom difference, we got 50 times versus 60 times. Here you can see comparison how much extra zoom you're gonna get with B700. As a result of using 1/2.3 inch sensor, both perform pretty similar in terms of sharpness and provided level of detail. However, there is difference when it comes to used lens. At wide angle, Sony has little bit more sharpness, so it's better for macro and landscape, as you can see. But things are actually different when you zoom. I admit that Nikon pictures shot in zoom are often sharper than Sony. It's not like always, but sometimes in certain conditions and specific focal length and set aperture. In my opinion, Coolpix B700 is just better when it comes to sharpness across its focal length range. There is also huge difference when it comes to how both cameras perform in terms of color reproduction. Sony is most of the time very saturated, vibrant and more accurate in its colors. There is just way more color nuances and differences, whereas in Nikon, I guess you could say it's more neutral, but for a point and shoot it's kind of washed out and flat in comparison with Sony. Dynamic range is pretty similar on both. Differences in those shots are more in terms of how both handles exposure control. Sony HX400 image is often darker and less exposed than in Coolpix B700. Another little difference is noise reduction algorithm. I noticed it on many other Sony cameras. It tends to make little artifacts, while Nikon is less aggressive and leaves more unprocessed noise. You can see that even at ISO 100 in the crop because of small sensor. Depth of field is also a little bit better on Sony, partially thanks to its better aperture of f2.8. Low light performance is on pretty similar level. Biggest difference is once again in saturation, color accuracy and automatic white balance behavior, which is better in Sony HX400. You can argue about the daylight performance because Nikon is more neutral, but in low light Nikon is definitely losing, it's way too dull. Other important difference is in auto mode. Sony with its so-called intelligent auto mode is way better for the beginners. In both Sony and Nikon things are pretty straightforward, you just press shutter button and etc. However, there are few differences. Firstly, Sony can automatically take couple of pictures and stack them into one to make noise reduction in low light condition. Second is that Sony automatically detects and switch to macro mode, whereas in Nikon you have always remember to manually switch autofocus mode to macro. At least I didn't discover other way. Last difference is in ISO values. Sony tends to give higher ISO, which is good thing in low light because of faster shutter speed you can shoot something without tripod and it won't become blurry. But worse and completely unnecessary in daylight, like here, with this animal in the zoo hidden in shadow. Finally, movie quality. You may remember that Nikon Coolpix B700 is capable of shooting 4K video, while HX400 is limited to 1080p. But don't go crazy with that. Both are far from 2018 video quality standards that flagship smartphones provide, for example. 1080p videos are way better on Sony HX400. They are more detailed, have much more balanced colors and proper exposure. Everything is more visible. Nikon may seem sharper, but it's just digital sharpening which I cannot stand. Maybe when you shoot videos in zoom, Nikon is better. But aside from that, Sony is winner. Stabilization in video mode is also Sony's strong side. Same goes for autofocus, it's better in Sony. Videos in low light are also brighter and less noisy than in Nikon. In fact, 4K mode in Nikon Coolpix B700 help it make videos more detailed, but they are still not accurate in colors and have that unnecessary digital sharpening look to it. And that 4K mode has some downsides. For example, you cannot turn additional electronic stabilization. To sum up, if you want better all-around camera for shooting in various scenarios and you don't necessarily use zoom all the time, I would advise go with the Sony HX400. But if you need super zoom camera that has little bit larger zoom and better photo quality in zoom all the way across the focal length range, pick Nikon Coolpix B700. That said, you cannot really go wrong with both of those cameras. Sony is better as universal point-and shoot camera, Nikon is better as just being a super zoom. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments which camera you think is better and if you want me to make shorter videos or longer and more information packed like this one. Subscribe and rate my video. Thank you and see ya!